Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Normal America Show, November 11th, 2020. Thank you so much for being here. So, I have a good day planned for me. My wife has the day off work, so we're going to do some shopping, getting ready for my baby Hank that'll be coming here due January 6th. So, I'm excited. Should be a good day for me. So, thank you so much for being here for the show. And first and foremost, let me say Happy Veterans Day. Thank you to everyone that served. You're the reason that I could do a show like this. You're the reason that the United States is the greatest country in the history of the world. And wherever you are in life right now, just know that this country is grateful for you. And we owe you an eternal debt of gratitude. So thank you so much. And I'll mention Veterans Day here as the show goes on. But if you know a veteran in your life, just let them know, that you're thankful for their service. I hope to see some veterans that I know quite well today and be able to tell them in person. So, but yeah, Veterans Day, always a good day. So just keep that in mind with, the bitterness and the anger and things like that revolving around the election, that there still are people out there that fought for this country to give us the right to even potentially have a voice, even if I think that voice is being sucked from normal Americans every day. The only chance we have is because of those great veterans. So thank you all. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Janet, Jarhead, Millionaire, Allow Reality. Thank you all for being here. So just a programming note, I'll be continuing to do these shows at 8 a.m. every morning, weekday morning. Friday, I have an offer to debate a Twitch streamer named Valsh, who's a big left-wing streamer. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. I would love to. I would love to be able to debate him, and hopefully I could work that out, but I have a couple things going on, some medical appointments and some work stuff. So hopefully I could work that out. I would love to do that, but I think that would be fun. I think primarily it'll be a panel debate, but it'll probably be me talking the most on our side as always. I think primarily that will be about potential election fraud and what we see in that. So, what's up, Jen? Nice to see you. So, let's talk about the news of the day. So, first off, I would be remiss. One of the things I'm trying to do, even though I think that there was fraud in this election, again, I can't prove it. I think all of the facts go to that. Let me give you an analogy for the people that don't think there's fraud or don't think there's proof of it. Let me talk specifically what I'm going on about. I can't prove to you 100% that there was fraud for various reasons. One, I'm just an average citizen and I don't have access to actual documents and things like that you would put in a court case to try to prove fraud. All I could do is look at the patterns. I could look at the publicly available information. I could look mathematically whether there's a suggestion that it could be fraud and things like that. But that won't be proof. Now, what will happen is... Oh, okay. Sorry. I have a friend, by the way, a great friend of mine. I should have mentioned this. So before I get started here, I'm on YouTube, DLive, I'm on Twitch, and I'm on Periscope, and I'm also on Podbean, which is a podcast format, audio only. So apparently my mic switched out to a crappier mic. My camera has a mic as well, and it's terrible. So apparently yesterday my camera mic was running. So he was helping me get set up to make sure that this mic's running through the podcast as well. So if you're watching on Podbean and yesterday you were like, this is garbage, this sound quality sucks, hopefully it'll be better today because I actually have the right mic. And that should be a problem that I don't suffer in the future. I think I've finally corrected that. So there we go. Anyways, so about this fraud, I can't definitively prove fraud. That's okay. I'm just being honest. I'm not going to come on here and say this is 100% smoking gun proof. I'm not going to do that, right? Now, someone on the left or someone that thinks Trump lost and there was no fraud might say, well, if you don't have 100% proof, well, then why are we even talking about this? Well, here is the analogy I would use. Many people on the left, correctly so, I think, and many on the right as well, but we're just focusing on people on the left here, think that money influences politics, right? So they might say something like this. Oh, look, this senator took money from big oil companies. And so then they voted to basically allow fracking in this wildlife reserve. Well, that's because they got all this money from the oil companies. They don't have proof of that. There is no direct proof where that particular senator, there's a document saying, I am voting this way because I was paid. There's not proof. Now, you could draw a straight line and go, oh, that's odd. They weren't for this, then they got paid, and now they're voting for it. So all of us intuitively know, yeah, that's very suspect looking. But can we 100% prove it? No. We just see that all the evidence speaks that that's the most likely outcome. That's what I'm saying with fraud. I can't 100% prove it. And if it was just one instance, then we might be able to say, well, okay, maybe that's just an anomaly. But when we see the same things occurring in all of these swing states, like them stop counting votes in the middle of the night, and then between the hours of like 4 and 6 a.m., them finding hundreds of thousands of votes, over 90% of which go for Joe Biden, them keeping poll watchers out in these areas that were Republicans, the media calling places like Arizona very early. All of these things, they're all going, glitches that only ever seem to take votes away from Trump and go to Biden. All of these things are always going in the same direction. Now, maybe we'll find that there was other examples of this going the other directions, and that will make fraud look less likely. That's fine, but all the more reason to audit the election. The fact that we have, Bill Binney is someone that I really trust. Bill Binney was a whistleblower from the NSA, and he was one of the people that was at the start of the NSA data collection program. So he was one of the higher up people that were involved there. And I saw him do an interview about this, and he's like, look, these glitches that they're talking about aren't glitches. The reason that happened was because a human put it in that way. These systems don't glitch like that. So when we see these glitches, it's intentional. So, well, thank you. I'm glad the audio quality is better. Yeah. I've not seen that, Eric. Or Epic. I'll check that out. I do like John Solomon, but I'll check that out later. So that's the problem I have. Now, I want to be honest, though. One of the things that comes, you might think I'm crazy. You might think I'm nuts. Two things I want to say on that. One, you cannot blame people for distrusting the results of this election when they decided we were going to change how we vote 3 months out. You can't blame people for being distrusting when we've seen the FBI engaged in a coup against Donald Trump. You can't blame people for being distrusting when we see the mainstream media be a propaganda arm of Joe Biden, refuse to cover stories that were critical of him, and cover any sensational garbage that was against Donald Trump. When we've seen all of this, you can't blame people for being distrusting. I wouldn't have blamed Democrats for being distrusting if Trump had narrowly won. That happened because we radically changed the way we vote 3 months out. And you saw it. Democrats were saying, oh, is Trump messing with the U.S. Postal Service? Oh. So if he would have narrowly lost, they would have said, well, this is because Trump affected the Postal Service and that's what's going on. That's exactly what the Democrats would be saying today. All the people that are making fun of you saying, oh, fraud, just accept the election. That's what they would be saying. We need investigations to make sure, oh, there are allegations from Postal Service workers that, they got orders from the Postmaster General to, not send out mail as quick as possible, and they didn't have proper ballot access and things like that. That's what you'd be hearing. Claims of voter suppression. And Russia. Of course, Russia. Russia would have interfered as well. So they're being disingenuous if they say, oh, you just need to accept. I can't see how anyone would question this. It should be questioned because of all the things we saw. Now, the second point on this. Having said that, I'm trying to be fair-minded and honest. So, for example, if I see things that are circulating that are evidence of fraud that I think potentially have an alternative explanation, I'm going to call that out. So let me give you some examples. There was a document going around. It claimed to be from Real Clear Politics and another place. I forget where it was. And in this document, it took a bunch of states and said, Wisconsin, 3.1 million people vote, or 3.5 million people voted, 3.1 million registered voters. That's 100 and something percent turnout. Pennsylvania, 110% turnout. That document was false. The number of people that voted was correct, but the actual registered voters was incorrect. Now, in Wisconsin, it's still 90%. That's still a skeptically high number. But that document was wrong, and it was easy to check. All you had to do was go to each state's voter registration rolls, and you could see that none of them were over 100%. Now, there are allegations that specific districts may have had over 100% voting. I have not seen proof of that. I've heard those claims, but I just want to let people know that document that was circulating, it said from World Something and Real Color Politics, was not true. There is evidence that has been circulating of it'll be like a man and a woman. It'll be two people, and one of them will be filling out ballots real fast. These are poll workers. Could that potentially be fraud? Absolutely. And I was like, what would the alternative explanation for this be? This is damning. Well, the alternative explanation is in some states you're allowed to cure ballots. And what that means is a ballot that for some reason the machine would not tabulate, if it's obvious who they were attempting to vote for, the poll workers are allowed to fill out an alternative ballot and then run it through. So theoretically what happens is if the woman's filling out the ballots and the man sitting across from her, he's reading aloud, okay, they voted for Trump, they voted for the Republican for House, they voted for the Democrat for Senate. And that woman's filling it out. So there is an alternative explanation for that. Now, what's to stop that woman from just filling out the ballot how she sees fit? Because the other guy's not checking. Nothing as far as I know. That doesn't prove fraud, but I think that that's a pretty big glitch in the system. Not glitch, but oversight in the system. All the more reason to have poll watchers there. Oh, wait, what's that? We had a bunch of poll watchers that were Republicans that were kept out. But again, the mere fact she was filling it out, that's not proof of fraud. Another thing that I talked about was the idea of Benford's law. So a friend of mine sent me a mathematician discussing this, and even though it could be evidence of fraud, it's not necessarily evidence of fraud. And I have to admit, I haven't watched the whole video that my friend sent me, but basically, it has to do with the pivot number you're using on exactly what types of things you're working with. And so in this case, it could be that Benford's law points to anomalies, but it also could be that there's a reasonable explanation for that. Now, it seems strange that law seems to be violated the most times when it's a swing state, but it is worth saying that there is an alternative side to that argument. Now, having said that, I did not see the math that I went through yesterday, which showed the average of Democrat to Republican votes and mail-in ballots, that it becomes a straight line. It might be a state with more Trump voters than Biden or more Biden than Trump, but it's a straight line in almost every state. And the reason for that is when you put when something goes through the mail system, it's basically shuffling it. So it's like shuffling a deck of cards. And the more you randomize something, the more you can have a predictable straight outcome. Yet the only states that didn't operate in were the swing states, which inexplicably all started to go up for Biden, either direct jumps for Biden or gradually started to go up for Biden. And it only happened in those states. Is that proof of fraud? No, but it is an anomaly that shows that we should be looking at it. So, right, and Millionaire says there was way too much going on at the same time, and I think we all seen this coming, just not everything at once. Right. Now, the other thing is, remember, I don't have to prove fraud to think that this election was stolen. I don't. Every ballot cast on election day, I don't believe this, but theoretically, it could have been legitimate, and the election was still stolen. How? Because it was stolen in the lead up to the election. It was stolen when the media refused to ask Joe Biden questions or refused to cover stories critical of him. It was stolen when the FBI engaged in a coup against Trump, and all of these unelected bureaucrats in the FBI, the State Department, and elsewhere leaked and smeared Trump in any way they could. It was stolen when Pfizer knew that they had a vaccine that was hopeful, and Dr. Fauci knew it as well. But instead of releasing that information before the election, because it would have proved Trump's claims right and made him look good on COVID, they instead decided to bury it until immediately after the election. It was stolen when tech companies decided to censor conservatives and censor a newspaper like the New York Post that was reporting evidence critical of Joe Biden, but allow any salacious comment about Trump to go forward, like his tax returns and a litany of other things that were about him. Remember, the Democrats wanted you to believe that 12 Russian trolls stole the 2016 election. That's what they wanted you to believe. They used Facebook posts. That stole the election. That's what they told you. Now, they have no problem with the entire organization of Facebook operating as a campaign arm of Joe Biden. This was the same thing that happened with the Cambridge Analytica story. So if you remember this, there was a story that, and by the way, this story's fallen apart because what happens is the drive-by media will report this stuff, smear Donald Trump, accuse him of corruption, and then when it's proven not, they just move on. They never really recant. So with the Cambridge Analytica story, what it was kind of a polling firm or, a firm, I believe it was like a law firm, but basically it was designed to help campaigns, and they helped Republicans in the Trump campaign. And it was alleged that they were corrupt because they used surveys and things like that on Facebook to obtain personal information of people so they could have targeted ads. So, company working on behalf of the Republicans using small amounts of Facebook data, very small amounts, to target campaign ads. That was considered corrupt. We had to have meetings on Capitol Hill. The media went nuts. Can you believe the corruption of Republicans and Trump that they did this? They used your data to target these ads. I believe this story was broke by The Guardian or The Telegraph, one of the two British papers. And they broke this because Cambridge Analytica, I believe, was a British firm. The same newspaper that broke it in 2003 or 2013 wrote an article about how awesome Barack Obama was in his campaign. And it was the wave of the future because what they did was they contacted Facebook's CEO and leadership and got data directly from the leadership of Facebook and then used that data for targeted ads. In other words, they did what they were accusing Trump of, except times 1,000. Instead of just one little company using one little portion of Facebook data, they used the entirety of Facebook and all of their data. And the British paper said that was very shrewd of Obama. The future of politics. What a great move. One of the best run campaigns ever. So when Obama did it way worse than when Trump did it, it was perfectly fine. A smart move. When Trump's team did it with just a little company, they were like, this is terrible. This is theft of the election. Well, it's the same here. 12 Russian trolls using Facebook, they stole the election. Facebook itself being for Joe Biden, no problem. No problem there. Where's the problem? And again, Professor Robert Epstein correctly pointed out, well, I can't say correctly. In my estimation, it's obvious that places like Google will be able to sway huge amounts of votes. Professor Robert Epstein said in 2020 alone, they had the ability to sway 16 to 20 million votes. And so again, I think that the crux of our argument needs to be, if you're right to our friends on the left that fraud didn't occur, are you happy with the fact that probably the least energetic campaign of all time, the Joe Biden campaign that spent 80% of its days in the month leading up to the election basically with a lid on it, if the establishment and if the tech companies and the media companies and corporations like Pfizer and other corporations and the academia and the entertainment industry, if they all come together and say, this is our candidate, we are entering a world where they will have so much power that there's nothing you could do about it. If they could drag Joe Biden across the finish line, who is the potential candidate that they wouldn't be able to? And you say, well, what if they pick a candidate with scandals? So they'll bury them. They'll just say they're not true. They control the narrative so much that only stories they want will be allowed to circulate. Now, you might... Apologies to that. I have no idea what's going on. Periodically, my computer just freezes up. I don't know if it shouldn't. It's a brand new computer. I haven't had any problems except in the past week and a half. I've ran virus scans. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, hopefully the feed is back now. So I apologize for that. I don't know. So anyways, let me continue. If they could bring someone like that across the finish line, who is it theoretically that they couldn't? That should worry every one of us. That should worry our friends on the left. It should worry our friends on the right. Everyone. I don't know if it's YouTube doing it or what, but yeah, it's really weird. But I'm back. So I lose half my watchers. So okay. The podcast was still going. It's something to do with OBS, I think. I don't know. But anyways, so continuing. So the point is, yeah, thank you. I'm back, everyone. Sorry. If that happens, trust me, I'll be back. I'll be going till 10 o'clock. Just look for it to refresh. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, my buddy Rational Wrong Thing got kicked off Discord for no reason. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's a big conspiracy against me to shut down my channel, but certainly places like YouTube, I'm short-lived for there. They're going to be, they're already censoring me as far as people don't get notifications. People are unsubscribed. Everything I do is demonetized. I think if I said anything that's dangerous, no, I'm vehemently against political violence and stuff like that. And yet I get demonetized for dangerous speech and stuff. So, yeah. So if you could follow me on DLive or somewhere else, DLive or Twitch even, it would be better because I assume YouTube will boot me off eventually. Anyways. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know YouTube messes with other conservative channels too, but I don't think this is a YouTube thing. It could be. I don't know. I'm not very tech savvy. So anyways, moving on. If it does that again, I'll refresh and I'll be right back, just so you all know. So that's the point. All of this stuff was proven before the election. And it's difficult to take seriously people that are like, oh, that's not a big deal, that told us how big of a deal it was that 12 Russian trolls influenced the 2016 election. That required 4 years of investigation. Or Russians allegedly stole material from the DNC and published it. Okay, well, someone stole Trump's tax returns and published it right before the election. So if that was reason to influence the 2016 election, therefore we needed 4 years of investigation, why would this be any different? Instead of just a small group using a small bit of Facebook, we have Facebook in itself, and Twitter, and YouTube, and Google, which is YouTube's owned by Google, and the media, all in the tank for Joe Biden. And this is the problem. This is what the average person needs to think about, the bigger picture. Again, it's different. I don't know. Is there a chance that there was no voter fraud? There's a chance. I think it's an incredibly small chance because all of the circumstantial evidence speaks to the opposite. But if I'm on the left, I could see saying this is sour grapes. I could see thinking that. Them saying, I don't see proof of voter fraud. I think this is sour grapes. Trump supporters are just mad because he lost. So I'm trying to think of things like they would. Like, okay. But how would they justify the mainstream media, the tech companies, and all this stuff, and what I was just talking about, being totally in the tank for Joe Biden? Because most of those people thought it was horrible that Russia interfered. Horrible. Yes, and a good friend of the show, Mark Gaffey, who watches on Periscope, that I think's a left-winger. You're welcome to come on anytime, Mark, and debate me. What are the odds that there's enough fraud to change the results in a meaningful way? I would say the odds are pretty good. However, the courts will not do anything. Because the courts, it would have to be definitive proof. So here's the problem. Let's say that we find 10,000 ballots that are obviously fraud. Illegal. Not mistakes, but obvious fraud. Now, all of us know if there were 10,000, there would be way more than that. It's hard to prove every single case of that. I don't see how the court, though, makes the decision, well, if these 10,000 are here, there was obvious other fraud as well. So I don't see how they then overturn it. The other thing is, even if they do have evidence that there's enough to overturn, I don't know that the courts will make that decision because unlike Trump supporters, a lot of people on the left will riot and attack people. That's what they do. And of course, that's another thing that the media and the Democratic Party lie about. Am I saying the courts are corrupt? Yes, largely. I don't know how else you would explain a court system that says you could go to a casino, but you can't go to church. But people like Mark here who want to focus so much on, I don't see proof of the fraud. Mark has no problem with the media. Mark has no problem with the tech companies. No problem with the FBI all being tools on the same side of the Democratic Party. Does not have a problem with that. And that's going to be the problem, that it's those double standards. But people like Mark will see and people on the left will see. Eventually, there will be someone that they dislike that all of these agencies and all these groups will get behind. Maybe it's Jeb Bush. And they'll say, how could Jeb Bush win? Who likes him? Well, your establishment leader said Jeb Bush was going to be the president, and so that's the way it is. And people like Mark and others on the left will go, but I wanted Bernie Sanders. I wanted Jill Stein. Look at how popular they were. Look at the huge crowds they were getting. Doesn't matter. In an effort to get rid of Orange Man Bad, these people on the left have signed up with the very establishment that they criticized for so long. They're now part and parcel. They've given them carte blanche to do whatever they want. They don't care. People like Mark and other people on the left, they don't care that bogus Logan Act violations were used to go after Mike Flynn. And now we have Biden's team admitting, yes, we're talking to foreign leaders doing the exact same thing. They don't care. They don't care that the FBI engaged in that double standard. They don't care that the FBI used unverified opposition research paid by the DNC and Hillary's team that sourced a Russian spy, who the FBI knew was a Russian spy, to spy on Donald Trump's campaign. They don't care. They don't care at all. That's great. Orange Man Bad. No problem. Don't care at all. No, Mark, you don't care. You don't care. Mark says, dude, I do care. You don't care. That's a lie. If you cared, you would be talking about how this election was stolen. No, it's not called judgment. It's called hypocrisy. That's what you are. I know, it's hard. Most people that are hypocrites, they don't look in the mirror and say, I'm a hypocrite. They make excuses for their hypocrisy. You're the type of person that cheats on your wife, and then when your wife cheats on you, you're devastated. You're like, how can this be? Boy, she's a terrible person. Well, you're a hypocrite. You were behaved in the very behavior that you criticize from others. They wanted every bit of Donald Trump's finances investigated when it came to him potentially getting money from foreign sources, even as a businessman who wasn't in office. But any accusation of Joe Biden or his son getting money from foreign sources, they don't care. They thought a potential Trump quid pro quo that was never proven was reason for impeachment, but the Obama-Biden admitted quid pro quo was no problem whatsoever that resulted in the firing of a prosecutor that was looking into the company that Joe Biden's son worked in. They're just hypocrites. And they could tell you outward, oh no, it's different. And they try to make their minds think that way. They do. They honestly try to come up with excuses why one of these is okay, but the other isn't. They try really hard. But deep down, they know. They know deep down. You can call in anytime, Mark Gaffey. You don't even need a whiteboard. Feel free to call in. You want to get on my Discord and call in? Right. He says it's not getting money from foreign sources. It's hidden money for national security risks. Right. That's exactly what the Bidens were accused of. Getting money from China that they were hiding. We even have an in-person witness that was a business partner of theirs named Tony Bobolinsky, who talked about how they were trying to circumvent the legal procedures that he was setting up to properly record the money, and instead was getting money from places like the Chinese spy master, or the spy master of China, in the words of Hunter Biden, or Burisma, receiving all this money. Maybe another time, right? As always. And for regular watchers, you could always see, isn't it? It's always very peculiar, isn't it? Oh, if I just had this time with you, Rob, I'd prove you. Oh, okay, you could come on the show. Oh, I can't right now. Remember the other day it was someone saying, let me call in. I said, sure, call in. Oh, I can't. My grandma's sleeping right now. We get it, Mark. We get it. We totally understand. Anything Trump did was a national security risk. Trump's team trying to talk to Kislyak, Flynn trying to talk to Kislyak, national security risk. Biden's team wanting to talk to foreign powers in his transition, no problem. Since when are the Bidens a thing? I guess since the family was first born. What is that supposed to mean? Remember, one of the big accusations from the left was that there was a P tape out there about Trump, and that the Russians would use that for what they called compromat. In other words, they were sitting on this pornographic P tape about Donald Trump, and then they would use that tape and they would say, Mr. Trump, President Trump, we have the evidence. I can't do a Russian accent. We have the evidence of you engaged in pornographic behavior that would be embarrassing. We will release this unless you vote our way. Yet somehow the same people that were hugely interested in that, now we know that that tape was garbage, but there are tapes out there of Hunter Biden. Oh, well, that's just Hunter. Who cares? Oh, as if they couldn't use that to exploit Joe Biden. Oh, it's not Joe himself, it's his son, so that's okay. That couldn't be used to exploit him. Isn't that funny how that works? Now, I personally don't care either way. I don't care. I didn't care if there was a P tape about Trump. I don't care if there's sexual tapes out there about Hunter Biden. I care if they're illegal as far as like if it was underage people and things like that. And I've heard those allegations, but I haven't seen proof. So I'm not touching that. But as far as just Hunter Biden smoking crack or picking up hookers, I don't care. But it was the left that cared. It's their standards. They thought it was a big deal if Trump engaged in strange sex acts because it could be used to exploit him. But when it's Joe Biden's son, no problem. No problem whatsoever. That's when the Bidens were a thing. They thought it was a big deal. If there were shady financial connections with Trump's kids and foreign powers, they would think that's a big deal, right? But Joe Biden's kids, no problem. Even when we have a business associate that was involved in these dealings with Hunter Biden, admitting that Joe Biden was involved in these. It wasn't that, oh, well, this was heavily investigated. The media really scrutinized this and then found out that there was nothing to it. That's not what happened. They said, we're refusing to cover it. It's Russian disinformation. The emails are all false. Then when we found out the emails were true, they were like, well, we're still not covering it. It's Russian disinformation. But thank you for being here, Mark, because that is the point I'm trying to illustrate to people, to just illustrate how hypocritical so many on the left are. And it's sad because I'm telling people we should reach out to people like you, Mark, and we should. I don't know what your political preferences are. I just know you hate Trump, and you seem to be a fan of the establishment left. But even someone like you, eventually all these people on the left that say Orange Man bad, they're going to get spurned by this very system that they've advocated for trusting the intel community no matter what, for allowing the intel community to basically control our media. We see now Brennan, Clapper, Comey, people like that are pundits on the media stations, for having the media just be propaganda arms for them, for allowing intel officials to selectively choose who they want to investigate, spy on, etc., based on their political beliefs. We'll see. You know, now that the left's talking about lists, we're going to put people on lists that supported Trump. They'll be on those lists as well, eventually. I'm not going to be, I'll say I told you so, but I'm also going to say that's why we should come together to fight corruption. Understand, I would vote for someone on the left whose domestic policies that I disagree with, who I thought was legitimately fighting for the average person and was against this establishment corruption, before I'd vote for someone whose policies seemed to align with me, but I thought they were just pro-establishment and were okay with the corruption. So, for example, Jeb Bush's domestic economic policies might look more like mine, or Mitt Romney. We'll use Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney's might look more like mine than Tulsi Gabbard. I'd vote for Tulsi Gabbard any day of the week over Mitt Romney. Now, Tulsi did make a crucial mistake. She supported the impeachment efforts initially against Trump. But that's because I'm a person that I've isolated what the most important issue is, and I'm not just going to be a partisan. Tulsi Gabbard, by the way, was out there better than any Republican before this election talking about the potential for ballot harvesting to steal an election and was pushing against ballot harvesting. That's a Democrat who hates Trump. Where were the Republicans? Some of them were pushing against that, but still. Yeah, Rational says anyone who thinks the media treated Trump fair was doing the best by the U.S. is willfully ignorant and lying to themselves. That's exactly right. And we've been on the debate panels. Me and other people like Drone Tech have been on these debate panels with a straight face where people on the left tell you, I don't see any media bias. I don't see any media bias at all. Now, the title of the show today was about whistleblowers. And this has to do with more hypocrisy on the left and the treatment that we see of whistleblowers. Think way, way back. You remember the times like when the Model T came out and you had to crank the engine in the front of the car? You know, we had a lot of horse and buggies around back then. You know, prohibition, things like that. We're entering World War I. Think way back then, right? If you could think way back then. And now, okay, you're there. Now, fast forward to just a couple months ago, because we're not thinking that far back. Remember when whistleblowers were sacrosanct? Remember when you couldn't even name them? You couldn't even name them. Oh my goodness, the tech companies and media, how dare people name them? You can't. They have to be protected at all costs. Whistleblower, how dare, oh my goodness, the fact that the Republicans are trying to name the whistleblower, that proves that they're danger enacted upon that whistleblower. Oh my goodness. Remember that? That's what we were told. Now, there were legitimate whistleblowers, even ones that aren't partisan, even ones that were on the left, that were prosecuted by Barack Obama. No one cared then. The media didn't care then. They didn't care. The Democrats didn't care then. Yeah, get those dirty whistleblowers. Did they say something that could damage Obama and his administration? Yeah, get them out. Those whistleblowers, no time of day for them. But Eric Chermella, the guy who we can't name, that was the whistleblower who overheard Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president. That guy needed to be protected at all costs. That guy was a national hero. He was standing up to power at grave threats to himself. Remember that? That's what the left told us. They were super serious about it. Super serious. Okay, that's the standard. Again, it's not my standard. It's their standard. They're the ones that are in charge of all these institutions. They have actual power. I don't. I'm just a guy talking to 20 people online. What happened now? So we have whistleblowers that are alleging that are improprieties in voting. Are the left saying we have to hear from these whistleblowers? They have to be protected. Is that what the left's saying? No. They're saying they're all liars. They're all cheats. Here's their address. So I'm going to play for some audio. Now, let me be clear here at the start of this. I don't know if these whistleblowers are telling the truth. I don't know. I've said all along, I'm not even including them in what I see as evidence suggesting fraud. It could be, but I don't know. I can't talk to them myself. Until I see the evidence they bring forward, it's just their word, and it could be an outright lie. It could. They could be telling the truth. It could be a lie, but it's hard for me to disseminate the truthfulness of that. However, they are whistleblowers. Just like we didn't know if the whistleblower in the Ukraine impeachment scenario was telling the truth. We don't know if these ones are. But that didn't stop the left from saying, oh, we have to hear from this impeachment whistleblower. We have to protect him. Right? So why is the standard different now? So anyways, one of these whistleblowers from my state of Erie, Pennsylvania, postal service worker, he claims that he heard his boss telling people to backdate ballots that would otherwise be illegal to make the ballots appear as if they were legal. Right? That would be a huge federal crime, and that would be a huge example of election fraud, actual fraud. Redating ballots so that they would be counted when otherwise they shouldn't have been. So it's a big allegation. This is a whistleblower. Supposedly he's been suspended from his job. In other words, retribution was enacted upon him by the agency he was blowing the whistle on. Now that's a huge no-no. But that happened. Where's the media? Where's the left? And so the Washington Post wrote a story yesterday saying that this whistleblower recanted his entire story. He admitted he made it up when he was actually talked to by federal investigators from the U.S. Postal Service. Right? Now I want to play you the audio that if this audio is true, which again, there's always a chance that it's not, from his interview with the inspector from the U.S. Postal Service. And I want to ask you, where are the Democrats, where are the left that talked about the importance of treating whistleblowers and making sure that, treating them with the utmost respect and making sure that they weren't attacked or they didn't feel pressured, right? That's what they told us. We couldn't even know the name of the whistleblower. We couldn't even know if that whistleblower had met with Adam Schiff during the impeachment fiasco because he could be unfairly pressured by federal agents working on behalf of Donald Trump. So let's hear, it's like a 2-minute clip. Let's play this clip from Veritas. And the part that I'm interested in this clip is two things. One, this gentleman says, I did not recant. And second, he has audio showing how the United States Postal Service inspector treated him.
The hell out of me.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm kind of pissed. I feel like I just got played.
And I heard him say to the supervisor that they messed up yesterday. I was like, oh, what did they mess up on? And he told the supervisor that they had postmarked one of the ballots for the 4th instead of the 3rd, because they were supposed to put them for the 3rd.
And so let me make good on that promise right away. Okay, this storm is getting crazy, right? And it's out of a lot of people's control. And so the reason they called me in is to try to harness that storm, try to reel it back in before it gets really crazy. Okay?
I understand.
Because we have senators involved, we have the Department of Justice involved, we have all
Trump's lawyers team's gotten a hold of me.
I'm not. Well, I am actually. I am trying to twist you a little bit because in that, believe it or not, your mind will kick in.
Okay.
We like to control our mind, and when we do that, we can convince ourselves of a memory. But when you're under a little bit of stress, which is what I'm doing to you purposely, your mind can be a little bit clearer. And we're going to do a different exercise too to make your mind a little bit clearer. Okay?
Good to go.
So, but this is all on purpose.
Roger.
I am not scaring you, but I am scaring you here.
It seems like they were trying to make me distrust y'all. And at the same time, it kind of affected, but at the same time, I was like, no, these guys have had my back since the get-go. So that's why I continued.
Do you think these federal agents have your back?
At this point, no. Hell
Do you
no.
think these federal agents are really interested in investigating fraud?
Honestly, I don't think they are.
And in fact, you heard Weisenberg tell a supervisor they were backdating the ballots to make it appear they've been collected on November 3rd. You still stand by that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, let me be clear on what I'm not saying. I am not saying that I have definitive proof that this guy's telling the truth. I don't know. He could be flat out lying. He could have recanted in the audio portions we don't hear, and now just be lying to all of us talking to James O'Keefe saying, no, I didn't recant. I still stand by it. He could be a total liar. I don't know. That's not the claim I'm making. The claim I'm making is this. The way that investigator treated him, an alleged whistleblower, is ridiculous. That is interrogation techniques used by our intel community in order to coerce false confessions out of people. Oh, your memory's not really what it is. I'm twisting you. I'm trying to scare you. I'm putting pressure on you because our minds, they remember what we want. Are we okay with that? That's right, Radagast. The left used to be, and notice also, it's the same with the General Flynn thing. Well, Flynn pled guilty, so he must be guilty. We have to ignore the fact that they pressured his family and said that they were going to go after his son, which is why he pled guilty. They say he pled guilty, he must be guilty. The same people on the left have correctly been criticizing law enforcement tactics like this for years. You could find on Netflix, you could find entire programs, seasons of them, that are dealing just with this issue. Interrogation techniques, false confessions. Let me ask you this. If Trump had narrowly won, right? And there had been a U.S. Postal Service worker that said, I heard from my higher-ups that in Trump-specific counties to make sure we did everything we could to make sure those ballots counted, including if the dates were wrong, to fix the dates ourselves. And Trump narrowly won in a comeback in these states because of these ballots. Do you think that the United States Postal Service inspector would have approached it the same way? Or would they have said, my God, tell us about this fraud? You know the answer. You know the answer. They're not investigating fraud. They're trying to silence people saying there is fraud. And that is not what should be going on. Now, again, if you're on the left and you say, I don't trust this guy, I don't think there was fraud, fine. That's not the argument I'm making here. My argument is, where are you in the treatment of this supposed whistleblower? And you can't say, well, he should be treated like that because he's potentially lying. If that's the case, the same thing should be treated of every whistleblower. So all of your whistleblowers are hugely important. We have to treat them with respect. All of that was garbage then. Just admit that you lied. You lied when you talked about the importance of whistleblowers. Because now that they're treating this whistleblower like a criminal, admitting we're going to scare you, we're going to twist your mind. And then how quick was it that the story came out? Oh, he recanted. This is an ongoing investigation into fraud. The investigators in the U.S. Postal Service are leaking information to the Washington Post immediately. That's what's happening. They didn't close the book. They didn't officially say, here's our official statement. We interviewed this guy. There was no fraud. That's not what happened. They leaked it to the Washington Post. This is irrelevant of whether or not fraud occurred. Do I think fraud occurred? Yes. I've gone through that many times. But I'm also I can't just have my show being like fraud occurred every day. So I'm talking about the things that we could definitively prove. We could prove the mainstream media was in it with the Democrats. We could prove the tech companies were. We could prove the CIA and the State Department was. We could prove their hypocrisy when it comes to treating whistleblowers. All of this is easily provable. Where's the left? Where's the ACLU? Where are they? They're not going to stand up for this guy? That's the double standards that I'm talking about. Everyone can see them. I don't care if you hate Donald Trump. Maybe you're the biggest Joe Biden fan in the world. Maybe you hate Donald Trump. That's fine. Let me be quite clear, and I've been on this show, I think more. Look, I slip up, and I apologize. Some days I get fired up, and I'm calling people names and stuff. I shouldn't do that. I'm making an effort to stop doing that, even if I feel that I'm being pushed that way. It's stupid, it's childish of me, and I shouldn't be doing it. Doesn't mean I won't get impassioned, but, the name calling and stuff like that, particularly with Trump supporters, and I know there's been some Trump supporters in the past days. It wasn't really name calling, but I know we're on the same side, and so I shouldn't do that. I'll fully admit that. Right? I get that. But one of the things I'm trying to do is acknowledge that there are a lot of Biden voters out there that aren't terrible people. The vast majority of them, I would say. They're not. They think they made the right decision. I think they made a huge mistake. So I'm trying to tell those people, look, here's why you made a mistake, and here's how it's going to come back to bite you. Because I understand that this is a long-fought war to get our country back. The people that run this show, you could call them, or the country, you could call them the deep state. I know that that word has negative connotations. I'm not talking about people smoking cigars with skull and bone tattoos. I'm talking about a bunch of people that have a vested financial and power structure interest to keep their position of power. And they don't want outsiders on the left or the right coming in. Those involve wealthy billionaires. That involves people in the media. That involves intel agents and State Department workers that we don't vote for. It involves establishment politicians on the left and the right. But the Democratic Party is basically the apparatus that they use in order to achieve their goals. And I'm trying to explain to people because I see the bigger picture. We're going to need people on that side, regular people that have been misled into thinking that the Democratic Party was for them. We're going to need them to come to our side, not the Republican side, but the populist side. The side that understands that our government no longer has the interest of its people at heart. The people running our government does not do that. The battle's not Republican versus Democrat. The battle's establishment versus the people that want to see a country governed by the people for the people. That's right. Biden's voters think they're JFK Democrats. I know, a lot do. They're going to find out the hard way. And instead of laughing at them, I'm going to say, I told you. You should come over to our side. Oh, let me check something real quick. That's not true, whose username. I'll admit that I was engaged in name calling with you, but you certainly were trolling. If your argument is the government doesn't have our best interests at mind because of neoliberalism, why would you vote for the quintessential neoliberalist candidate in Joe Biden? Whose name is it anyway? I mean, he's the definition. Hillary Clinton and him. No, this is what happened, whose username. I was talking to you, having a civil discussion. And you said, of course, fraud occurred. And I said, yes, that's the problem with the Democratic Party, because all these Democratic officials and media people said there was no fraud, that there could be no fraud. When even Democrats understand, when you talk to them, well, of course there's fraud. That was the problem. You said, but I didn't say that. I said, I know you didn't say that, but I'm not really concerned with your beliefs. I'm talking about the greater picture. And then you kept saying, but I didn't say that. You're straw manning me. You're straw manning me. I wasn't straw manning you. I never said you said that. I said that's what the Democrats and media were saying. That was the point of the conversation. I'm not going to relitigate. I don't think Trump was a neoliberal. I think Trump surrounded himself with people that were neocon, neolibs, and that's on him. And he should be held accountable for that. Like people like John Bolton. That it's inexcusable. We all knew who John Bolton was. How didn't Trump? That's inexcusable. But it seems clear to me that Trump was at least an outsider threat to the established neocon, neoliberal order that controls this country. Instead of saying, look, I would rather go with this guy who it's forcing these neocons and neolibs to out themselves as the corrupt agents that they are. Instead, millions of people were like, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden, who's been there for 47 years and has been part and parcel of this establishment that doesn't care about the American people. He did pick a Goldman Sachs rep for cabinet. Absolutely. He should heavily be criticized for that. Absolutely. But anyways, what I'm trying to do here is, instead of just saying there was fraud, and I fully admit this, like I can't admit this strong enough. At this point, a lot of these allegations, we're just going to have to see what the proof of them are. We could see the direction it was going, just like I can't prove that money in politics, that if oil companies give, this Republican senator in Utah a bunch of campaign money and then he votes in favor of those oil companies, I can't prove that that money was the reason he made that vote. But I could strongly suspect it. And I'm certainly going to point out how that looks incredibly corrupt. The same thing with this election and with the fraud claims. However, I understand that's not for everyone, and that's not going to convince people that hate Donald Trump. Unless you have 100% proof, they're going to say no. So I am trying to make the case. The other things that weren't just election day fraud that stole this election, and the double standards that we see from people on the left. I have a friend that's on the left who, I won't know if outraged is the right word, but messaged me how incredibly shady it was that Pfizer waited until right after the election to come out and say, hey, we have a vaccine that's 90% effective. And he's a Biden voter, and even he was like, wow, that's bad. That's pretty bad. He knows. How many people die? Look, I'm not even saying you would trust the vaccine or not. That's not what I'm here to say. But how many people, let's say this vaccine's effective. How many people potentially will die in the months now that it was delayed because Pfizer decided to not tell us about this earlier? But it was worth it because Orange Man bad, right? Instead, Trump was saying, look, I'm talking to these companies. There's going to be a vaccine. We could see doses being sent by the end of the year. And the media was like, no, that's impossible. And the Democrats said, that's a lie. It's impossible. Now, Dr. Fauci had access to all the evidence that Trump did. Did he once come out and say, no, that's true. We're talking to these people, and there's a good sign that this vaccine will be out by the end of the year? No, he didn't say that, did he? Dr. Fauci was silent. But he was interviewed yesterday and was like, oh, yeah, it's a good chance we'll have doses by the end of the year. And because of our cooperation with the military, it's going to be free and we're going to be getting those doses out there. He could have been saying that before the election. Instead, he watched the entire media and Democrat Party say, no, that won't happen. And he didn't say a word. Isn't that strange? Scaramucci came out and said, thank you, Joe Biden, for the vaccine. Thank you. Yep, there you go. There is not 0% proof, absolutely none of fraud. Again, I went through this every day, and just because people come in and say, I haven't seen the proof. I talked about it earlier in this video, talked about it in every video I've done for the past 6 days. Check it out. I'm not just going to repeat myself. It's nice to say there's 0% proof of fraud, but let's say you believe that. Okay, so you believe a system, Sheikh Axion, you believe a system where Joe Biden, who had a lid on his campaign, like how many days, who is a candidate that almost no one was excited about, that because the media was all in the tank for him, because tech companies were all in the tank for him, because the intel agents were all in the tank for him, that they, even the pharmaceutical companies were in the tank for him, that they could come out. Yes, he said it was possible to have a vaccine, but so that they drug him across the finish line. Fauci said it was possible, but we now know that Pfizer used 92 cycles to confirm this when actually they only had to use 60 cycles. So basically, they tested it 32 more times than they needed to. They knew 32 times ago, test ago, that they were getting a 90% cure rate, and yet they decided to withhold that information. Now, we know that Dr. Fauci would have been in contact with them and would have said, yeah, this vaccine is coming down the pipe. It looks almost certain. Right, people were scared of Trump because the media and the tech companies and everyone are all in the tech, and the CIA and the FBI. Yes, Shakespeare, you're making my point. And now that we've given them power, think of all the things they said Trump was going to do. I had gay friends of mine that were telling me that when Trump got elected, that they were going to be imprisoned for being gay. Did that happen? No. In fact, Trump actually appointed more gay people to positions of ambassador and other diplomatic positions than any president before him. He is the first president that entered office who supported gay marriage when he entered office. And yet, we were told by the media he was going to go after gay people. Black people, he was going to after. He was a horrible racist who was going to attack black people. Did he do that? No. He actually had record numbers for unemployment for the black community. All of this stuff we were told Donald Trump was going to do. He has his finger on the nuclear button. He's a madman. Think of the wars he'll get us involved in. None. Oh, but North Korea, like countries like that, he can't deal with them properly. Nothing. But yes, people are afraid. I still talk to people. Look, and you have to understand, Trump supporters, this feeling's real. After 4 years of not locking up gay people, I still saw, I didn't personally talk to them, but I saw on Facebook old friends of mine that are gay celebrating. Thank God Trump lost, because I was legitimately worried I would be locked up if he won. After 4 years of doing nothing like that, they were convinced that that's what was going to happen. Because the words Trump says, that's why you're fearful. What words did Trump said that made you fearful, Sheikh Axion, or that you think made other people fearful? Can you tell me the words? I'd be interested to hear this. What were the words that he said that people were like, my God, I fear for my life? What were they? Was he suggesting putting people on lists? Oh no, that's AOC. To retaliate against them because of their political beliefs? Nope, that's not Trump. That's the Democrats. Did he and his administration, were they bailing rioters out? No, that was the Democrats. That was Kamala Harris and Joe Biden staffers. Was he personally talking to avowed racists like Jacob Blake Sr.? No, that was Kamala Harris. He incites violence and low-key telling people to take up arms for him. That's not true. That's not true at all. Let's see Trump's list, the massive list. See, I like this. So let's say hypothetically Shakespeare comes up with clips that he thinks show that Trump incited violence. Where's the violence coming from? Is it Trump supporters? Is that who's been burning the country down for the past 7 months? No, that's Biden supporters. Was D.C. boarded up because they were worried Trump supporters were going to burn D.C.? No, that was Biden supporters. Meanwhile, the left, almost all of them, including Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they said, what riots? Mostly peaceful. Antifa, that's just an ideology. I'm not going to condemn that. So I love this idea. Hypothetically, Trump, He could have incited violence where we could have seen Trump supporters engaged in riots. Okay, anything to say about the Democrats and the violence? No, I don't have anything to say about that. But I was worried about the potential Trump supporter violence. Again, all these incitements to violence. What's a bigger incitement to violence than this? Let me ask you this. Anyone who's on the left here, or anyone but Shakespeare, I can't watch the YouTube video during my stream, obviously. But if you quote me what he said in there that you think... Let me ask you this, Shakespeare. What would you do, like, if there was an actual Nazi that came into power? Yes, actually, I could watch it, you're right. But then I don't feel like it. I'm not going to stop my video to watch. Put a link up to a story I could read and I'll read it. Shakespeare, whose name is it anyway? Anyone else that would lean towards the left? What would you do if an actual Nazi was in power? What would you do? Would you use violence against that Nazi? Would you use violence against that Nazi? So, for example, if we thought, I don't know, an entire agency of the government were ran by Nazis, like ICE, immigration enforcement, if they were Nazis, do you think that there are people out there who would say, oh, geez, I was told these people were Nazis holding concentration camps? Do you think that could inspire violence? I do. I think we saw that violence, where we saw a John Brown Gun Club, which is a branch of Antifa member, attack an ICE facility with Molotov cocktails and guns until he was shot to death. All right, just for you. Let's go through the list. Never seen this. Let's go through it. Just for you, Shakespeare. Then, if I'm going to go through your 7-minute video, then I assume you will have the dignity to answer me. Correct, Shakespeare? Right? You'll have the wherewithal to answer me. Let's go. Let's go through your video then.
President Trump expressed interest in buying Greenland.
And he went out and
Tried to buy Greenland. How's that a scandal? What's that have to do with violence?
bought a big yacht. And he had a very interesting life. I won't go any more than that because you're Boy Scout, so I'm not going to tell you what he did.
Okay, so he had an adult theme when talking to Boy Scouts. How's this different than the left pushing for drag queen story hour, people that are completely nude, pushing movies like Cuties that's actually child pornography? Again, we're on to 2. What's this have anything to do with Trump inspiring violence? Number 3.
The price tag for President Trump's July 4th salute to America is more than $5.3 million.
Had a military parade. What's this have to do with violence?
At Mar-a-Lago are influencing how President Trump runs the Department of Veterans Affairs.
What does that have to do with violence if he was talking policy at his own place?
Gave him the kind of funeral that he wanted. I didn't get thank you. That's okay.
He said that John McCain's family didn't thank him for a funeral. What's this have to do with him inspiring violence?
Looking down, he'd be something. Maybe he's looking up. I don't know.
But period.
He suggested Dingle may be in hell. Okay, how is this worse than people saying that Trump's a Nazi, Trump's Hitler, Trump's a racist, Trump supporters are racist, etc.?
To push aside the Prime Minister of Montenegro to get in front for a photo op. Banning
He touched the Prime Minister of Montenegro. What does this have to do with him engaged in violence?
residents from enrolling in trusted traveler programs.
And ripping up memos.
He didn't want to give money to cities and states that were violating federal orders. How does this have to do with him inciting violence?
Letters, things he's finished reading or does not like.
Threatened to.
He supposedly ripped up things that he doesn't like. How's this inciting violence to other people?
Bomb sites of cultural significance, an action that could be a war crime.
He used mean words suggesting he might do mean things against hostile foreign powers. Yet he didn't get us in any wars like Obama, Biden, etc. did. What does this have to do with inciting violence?
As despicable as Hitler didn't even sink to using chemical weapons.
That's not apologizing for Hitler. That's showing that as bad as Hitler was, even he didn't use chemical weapons, which is talking about the horrors of chemical weapons. Meanwhile, we've seen people on the left, such as Sam Harris, say that Trump is literally worse than Hitler. Or no, wait, he said Bin Laden. But we've seen people say that Trump is literally worse than Hitler on the left. Okay, I'm done. He fired Scaramucci after 10 days. You see? You see the list? 100 examples of Trump's inciting violence. Well, we just went through the first 11 and it had nothing to do with anything remotely like that. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I showed you evidence and you refused to look at it. Oh, really? What's your evidence of Trump inciting violence? Well, he fired Scaramucci. Oh, man. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, Sheikh Zion. Oh, that wasn't the violence. I was just showing you how stupid he is. Fine. Now, we looked at your proof. Now, will you answer my question? If you believed that people were Nazis in our government, would you be willing to use violence against them? Oh, I'm going through a study. Okay, so what I told you was the evidence I wanted you to look at wasn't really the evidence I wanted you to look at. Yes. Okay, so Sheikh Zion says, thank you. That's all I was getting to. So Sheikh Zion admits, as someone on the left, if they thought that people were literal Nazis, she would use violence against them. We've heard the left for 4 years say that Trump was a Nazi, Trump was a racist, his supporters were racist, his supporters were Nazis. So which side inspired violence? Which side was it again? Trump has never denounced white supremacists. That's a lie. I'm done talking to you. He's done so over 35 times. He has condemned them when he was asked outright. Again, Trump 35 times has condemned white supremacy, including after Charlottesville 3 times. The media misled you, and you're making my point. Now, aftershock. All of you people, like normal watchers of mine, do you see what I'm talking about? Do you see what I'm talking about? Aftershock, I say the fact that the media and stuff are such propagandists, and the media and the intel agents and the Democratic Party are all aligned, and the tech companies, and they're going to be able to kingmake any president they want going forward. And Sheikh Zion says that's not true. The reason Trump lost is because of the things he says it's so fearful. Like what? Well, he refused to condemn white supremacy. The reason Sheikh Zion thinks that Trump refused to condemn white supremacy is because the media lied. And Joe Biden lied. Hey, Sheikh Zion, I'll show you a YouTube video that actually says what I say it's going to say, unlike you.
I denounce white supremacy, okay? Wait, are you listening? I denounce white supremacy. Okay. What's your next question? I denounce white supremacy. Okay. You start off with white supremacy, I denounce it.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
Are you
I'm
prepared
willing to do
specifically?
that. I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke. Any group of hate, I am, whether it's white supremacy, whether it's any other kind of supremacy, whether it's Antifa, whether it's any group of hate, I am very concerned about it, and I'll do something about it. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. Racism is evil.
By the way, what you just heard Trump say there, and I'm not talking about the white supremacists, they're condemned totally. That was the mark that he made where he said there were good people on both sides. So that was the lie that was pushed. Biden claimed that was the reason he got involved in the race, because Trump called Nazis good people. He said there were good people on both sides and bad people on both sides. He's not talking about the white supremacists, the KKK. Clearly, they should be condemned. That was the lie that was put forth by you, or to you, by the media and by Biden. So where are we at? We're at 13. He hasn't, remember, Sheikh Zion said, quote, he hasn't condemned white supremacy. We're at 13 times.
And those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. I didn't even know he endorsed me. David Duke endorsed me? Okay. All right. I disavow. Okay?
He disavows David Duke. Richard Spencer voted for Joe Biden. Has anyone asked Joe Biden if he denounces Richard Spencer? You know, the same Joe Biden that eulogized a grand cyclops of the KKK? No one's asked him.
David Duke is saying to his supporters and followers, vote for Donald Trump. White supremacists are saying, vote. Do you want those votes?
No, I don't want them, and I don't want him to say it.
Let me ask you.
Okay, so the media kept asking Trump about David Duke, saying that he was voting for Trump. Did you hear anyone in the media, when Richard Spencer came out and said, I'm voting for Joe Biden, did anyone in the media ask Joe Biden these questions? I wonder why. And it's not like Joe Biden doesn't have a past. I mean, he said you're not really black if you don't vote for him. He eulogized the Grand Cyclops of the KKK. So if they're going to ask Trump, well, David Duke likes you, do you want to respond to that? Why didn't they ask Biden? If Richard Spencer's voting for you, why don't you condemn that? Isn't that curious? Let's move on, though. Remember, Shakespeare said he never denounced white supremacy. Never denounced it. We're at 15.
About this one.
Are you ready before you ask the question?
Newt Gingrich said every Republican should repudiate this guy no matter what it takes.
And I do. Rebuked. Is that okay? Rebuked.
Rebuked.
Done. When Chris joined, we had a news conference, and they asked me the exact same question. I said, I disavow. I put out a tweet, and I put out on Facebook that I totally disavow. And I disavowed then. I disavowed today on ABC with George Stephanopoulos. I disavowed again. I mean, how many times are you supposed to disavow? But I disavow.
Secondly, David Duke and all were disavowed. I disavowed him on Friday. I disavowed him on Twitter and Facebook. They were disavowed again. I disavowed him every time I speak to somebody virtually. It was totally disavowed.
So are you prepared right now to make a clear and unequivocal statement renouncing the support of all white supremacists?
Of course I am. Of course I am. I mean, there's nobody that's done so much for equality as I have.
Remember, he never, right, Shakespeare, you still there? Sorry, I'm watching the video. Shakespeare, you still there? Your claim was he never disavowed white supremacy. We're up to 21. Right? Oh, is he admit he's trolling now? Oh, so that's what's going on. That's all right for the rest of you. So this is what you see that the left is. You can see from someone like Shakespeare. Watch my video. It's evidence. I watch it. It's absolute garbage. Well, he never disavowed white supremacy. Yes, he did 35 times. This is what they are. They don't care. Orange man bad, so they're willing to lie. They're willing to cheat. They don't care. They're willing to be hypocrites. Not everyone, but many people. I don't think Who's Your Name Anyway is that way, by the way. We may have been going back and forth the other day, but so far I haven't seen evidence to suggest that he's operating in bad faith. But when you say this guy didn't denounce white supremacy and we're up to 21 times and you're like, I knew it, I'm just trolling. I mean, you're worthless. Let's keep going, though. Let's go with the rest of the clip, right?
David Duke is a bad person who I disavowed on numerous occasions over the years. I disavowed him. I disavowed the KKK. Just to put it clear, I disavowed him in the past, and I disavow him now.
What do you see as the biggest problem with the Reform Party right now?
Well, you've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem. I mean, this is not exactly the people you want in your party.
And I disavowed David Duke, and I disavowed him the day before at a major news conference, but I disavowed David Duke. Now, if you look on Facebook, right after that, I also disavowed David Duke. When we looked at it and looked at the question, I disavowed David Duke. So I've disavowed David Duke all weekend long on Facebook, on Twitter, and obviously it's never enough.
How do you feel about the David Duke quasi-endorsement?
I don't need anybody's endorsement.
Would you repudiate David Duke?
Sure. How many times do I have to reject? I've rejected David Duke. I've rejected the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. From the time I'm 5 years old, I rejected them.
David Duke and robocalls are out again, the white supremacist movement supporting you. Do you have any words for that?
Well, I disavow the Ku Klux Klan, which obviously I'm going to disavow.
Do you want white supremacists to vote for you?
No, I don't at all. Not at all. And I will tell you, this is not about hate. This is about love.
I have to say, I've said it many times, and let me be clear again. I condemn the KKK. I condemn all white supremacists. I condemn the Proud Boys.
I spoke out forcefully against hatred, bigotry, and violence, and strongly condemned the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, and the KKK. So here is my first statement. When I heard about Charlottesville, we're closely following the terrible events unfolding in Charlottesville, Virginia. This is me speaking. We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America.
That last statement he made there, that was the very first statement he made after Charlottesville. condemning racism, bigotry, and violence. Now, Shanxian and people, how many times, if you watch my show, how many times have I gone through this? How many times? At least a dozen. Trump refused to condemn white supremacy. Joe Biden said the reason he got into this election was because Trump said that Nazis were good people. And then I go through it. And then they're forced to say, oh, okay, change the subject, or I was trolling, or whatever. What Shanxian said is true, though. People were scared of Donald Trump. They thought he was a racist. Where were all those questions? How many times were they going to ask? David Duke comes out and says, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. He's forced to answer for that every single time he appears somewhere. Richard Spencer endorsed Joe Biden. Did every media person that interviewed Joe Biden say, what do you think about Richard Spencer? What do you think about his endorsement? No, they didn't. They didn't ask, did they? Well, and yeah, Big Boy Surgeon says conservatives debating leftists with facts. I'm glad that there's a civil discussion going on in the chat. That's good. And I hope that I don't fall victim, which sometimes I do, to becoming less polite than I should. But yeah, I would like to foster an environment where we could have polite conversation. But yes, there are millions of people in this country that think that Trump said, refuse to condemn white supremacy. It's a lie. And we did this the other day. Someone said Trump refused to condemn. Well, he could have condemned every time he was asked. I could do the same with you. Shakespeare, do you condemn white supremacy? Anyone else? Boy, it's taken him a long time to respond. Looks like he's refusing to condemn white supremacy. You see the absurdity of this? Do you beat your wife? No. But do you beat your wife? No, I don't. So you're saying that sometimes you might beat your wife. No, I don't beat my wife. But are you willing to say right now that you don't beat your wife? Yes, I don't beat my wife. But honestly, people are saying you might beat your wife. Is that true? No, I don't beat my wife. In the future, may you beat your wife? No, I don't. I won't. Did you beat your wife in the past? No, I didn't beat my wife in the past. But you didn't say that you're not beating your wife right now. So are you beating your wife right now? Clearly I'm not. I don't beat my wife right now. Okay. So we'll move on to a different question. But before we do, I was just wondering, do you beat your wife? What are you supposed to do in that? You don't see the disingenuous nature of the people asking us questions. Meanwhile, the other guy, he eulogized the Grand Cyclops of the KKK. He said black people that don't vote for him aren't really black. That was in this cycle he said that. He said Hispanic people are diverse, unlike black people. Now, am I saying that's evidence that Joe Biden's a racist? No. But if you're a fair-minded media and you're going to go after Trump with all these questions about racism, why aren't you even going to ask one to Joe Biden and his team? He was asked about violence from Antifa. He says Antifa is just an ideology. What if Trump would have said that? Do you denounce white supremacy? Well, white supremacy is not a group. It's just an idea. Next question. Do you think the left would have been like, fair enough, he's right. There's no organization, the white supremacist. There's a bunch of groups that believe the idea of white supremacy, but white supremacy itself is just an idea. So he's not going to denounce it. He's just going to say it's an idea. Fair enough, President Trump. You think that would have flew? But Joe Biden could say Antifa. All he had to say was, I don't think that there's a specific organization called Antifa. I think it's an ideology. But yes, people engaged in violence in the name of Antifa, I condemn. He didn't say that, did he? Why is that? Why do you think that is? What about black supremacy? Was anyone asked to condemn black supremacy? Is that not a danger? See, white supremacists, they have no power whatsoever. Now, that doesn't mean they're not heinous. It doesn't mean that they can't individually affect people in a serious way through violence. They should be condemned. I've fought with white supremacists on my channel. But black supremacists, there are people in positions of power. How many people in the Black Congressional Caucus and Barack Obama himself met with Louis Farrakhan and had pictures taken with him? No problem there. One of the biggest cultural moments in our country this year was the funeral in Texas of George Floyd. At that funeral, that was broadcast by every major network, who was running security at that funeral? Anyone? Does anyone know? It was admitted by one of the speakers. He said, I would like to thank this group for having security here. Who was that group? Right, but I'm talking about the funeral in Texas. Who was the group that they thanked? Does anyone know? What group was running security in Texas at the funeral of George Floyd? Right, Aftershock. Yeah, Biden said some questionable things. Like, Biden said, I mean, you got the first mainstream African-American who's articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook man. The group that was running security was called the Nation of Islam. That's ran by Louis Farrakhan. They are a black nationalist movement. They believe in a country for and only black people. They are largely, the followers of that sort of ideology are largely responsible for the anti-Semitic attacks that you see in New York right now. That's why the media stopped covering. Remember? Oh my goodness, anti-Semitic attacks on the rise in New York. This must be because of Donald Trump. Only it wasn't Trump supporters, was it? It was Biden supporters. It was Nation of Islam people. That's who it was. They're running security at George Floyd's funeral. Did one of the networks say, whoa, this is basically the equivalent of the KKK, except with black nationalists. We strongly condemn it. Nope. They didn't say a word, did they? Didn't say a word. Did Joe Biden condemn it? Did all George Floyd's followers condemn it? Nope. Jacob Blake Sr., remember Jacob Blake Jr. was the person who was trying to rape a woman with her kid in the bed? Then he stole a car with her kids in it. Then he was tased by police and didn't stop. Then he tried to get in his vehicle to get a knife where the kids were that he was trying to kidnap, and the police shot him. You remember that guy? Well, his dad put all sorts of, and I apologize for some of this language, all sorts of tweets and messages up about pink-toed Jews and the evil of the Jews and all sorts of slangs about Jews. Kamala Harris met with him in person. She walked out of that meeting. You know what she said about, not the guy that was shot, his dad. You know what she said after she met this anti-Semite in person? She said, I'm very proud of him. Was she forced to answer for that? Has Trump done that? Has Trump walked into a move with an anti-Semite, walked into a meeting with him, and came out saying, I'm proud of this anti-Semite? Has Trump done that? Was Kamala Harris asked to apologize for that? Was she asked to denounce anti-Semitism? Nope. If you can't see how this, giving total control to these groups to be in one big party together, the Democrats, the media, the intel agents, the tech companies, academia, the entertainment industry, so many corporate interests, if you can't see how they could put a false narrative out there to win any election they want in the future, you're not thinking clearly. And I get it. There are many of you that hate Donald Trump. I get that. I understand. His personality would make it difficult for many people to not like him. I don't mind it so much, but I could see it. Okay. But how could you support the biggest evil of all in the name of taking him down? You've literally cut off your nose to spite your face. Well, we got rid of Trump. Great. Now you'll never have another corporatist establishment leader again. Good job. That's what you did. Yeah, how many times, Public Citizen says, remember when he pretended to forget who David Duke was? Did he? There are names that are brought up to me all the time. You'd be like, remember this person? I might not remember him at the moment. We played video of Trump denouncing David Duke 20-something times by name. Someone asked, what are the policies of Trump I liked, some that I didn't? I liked the idea of ending critical race theory in federal government. I liked the idea of the deregulations that he passed and things like that. I like the idea of kind of working for lowering pharmaceutical prices, ideas that trying to build the border wall and things like that. The idea of pushing for a new medical care and repealing the mandate for Obamacare, though I do put the ultimate responsibility on the Republicans to craft that legislation that they failed to do so. So they repealed the mandate of Obamacare, but they never adequately replaced it. But that wasn't Trump's job. He fought for the repeal, and I thought he did that well. Some of the things he did that I didn't like, I did not like him bombing Syria. I did not like his support for Saudi Arabia and their war in Yemen. Jack Hextaylor says, Trump was so anti-establishment he had John Bolton around. Yep. Exactly a fair criticism of Trump. Absolutely. Trump's greatest downfall was he didn't understand how deep the swamp is. So he thought that he could point these people around him, like John Bolton or like people from Goldman Sachs, that were actually going to do the right thing. And he was wrong. And the buck stops there. It stops with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, although I think there was fraud election day, but even we're not talking about that. We're talking about how the deck was stacked against him before the election even, with the media, the tech companies, the entertainment industry, academia, almost every major institution being totally against him. The fact that he put people around him that did not drain the swamp but helped entrench it, that's on him. It absolutely is. Now, I understand why, and I've talked about it, because it's difficult to find anyone qualified for those positions that aren't vested in keeping their power. In other words, there's no one qualified for these jobs that will drain the swamp because almost all of them are parts of the swamp. So it would be difficult for Trump to find people that look qualified for these jobs that weren't going to be against him. And remember, remember the anonymous guy? He wrote that book and was anonymous and was a whistleblower. And then it just came out, his name was like Miles something, I think. He said, and I think this was absolutely true, there were probably only 4 people around Trump that actually cared about Trump and had his interest at heart. Everyone else in his administration was out to get him. I agree with that. But that's on Trump. People like me, and by the way, you cast a lot of blame on Trump supporters as well, because I think Trump listened to his supporters. So if the big theme coming out of Trump supporters in 2018 was people like me saying, declassify it all, James Comey should be in jail, Brennan should be in jail, Clapper should be in jail for crimes that we could see provable, them lying to Congress. I proved in 2018, they all lied to Congress. Dead to rights. The IG recommended Comey for criminal prosecution. But I was getting heckled by Trump supporters that said, trust the plan. Trust the plan. That's what we should do. Trust the plan. Okay, how'd that work out? Trump did trust the plan, and now look how it looks. So yes, he should declassify everything now. He should, and I mean everything. He absolutely should. All of the operations against him and the criminality, all of the CIA drug running operations, all of the shady stuff we've done in our military industrial complex, bombing countries and doing stuff that was shady. He should declassify all of it. He should declassify the surveillance that they had on Martin Luther King Jr. He should declassify all the JFK files, everything. I want to see the slush fund, the congressional slush fund that I know both Republicans and Democrats used our tax dollars to get out of sexual assault allegations. Who used that fund? Declassify it. Put it all out there. Jack Hextaylor says, I feel like you're giving him too much leeway as if he didn't know he was putting around him. Maybe. The end result's the same. And my friend SJG, he believes that Trump was a deep state plant, that Trump never had our interests at heart. I disagree with that. But the end result's the same. Like, I had this conversation, I think, before anyone in the country. I was talking about this a year and a half ago. And again, Trump supporters were furious. This is for Trump supporters out there. If you're on the left, you might not understand what I'm talking about. If no one involved in the coup against Trump goes to jail, would we have been better with the Hillary Clinton presidency? Now, I know to a Trump supporter that's sacrilegious. How could you say Hillary should have been president? Well, hear me out. The reason I voted for Trump was because I wanted him to out corruption. And he did that. I don't think it was because he was playing 4D chess. I think it's because the corrupt had no choice. They can't help themselves. Trump won, my God, we're going at him with both barrels, every way we can. FBI, CIA will be spying on him. We're going to propagandize our media to go after him nonstop. We're going to have the tech companies, everything we can, we're going to go after this man nonstop, investigate him for 4 years, impeachment after impeachment, investigation after investigation, spying after spying, going after any of his allies we could see that have committed any crimes whatsoever, putting them in solitary confinement, going after them for as hard as possible. That was the plan. And now the average person more than ever is like, oh my goodness, look at how one-sided the media is. Look at how one-sided these intel communities are. Not everyone, but many more people woke up because of that. That's good. That's why I voted for Trump. However, if that's the issue I care about, are we in a better place that we all now, I knew about the corruption beforehand, but now almost everyone could see the evidence of the corruption in plain day. Are we better off that everyone could see it and accepts it than if we just didn't know? So if Hillary Clinton would have won, James Comey and Clapper and Brennan, they would have maintained power. And their plan was, we can't let the people know how corrupt we are. So we'll just incrementally steal this country away from them. The middle class will shrink incrementally. We'll have more open borders. We're pushing towards globalism. We'll do it slowly, slowly, slowly. It's a big plan. It's going to take a long time. But they don't want to mess up and be too obvious that they're corrupt and don't care about the American people, because then they might do something about it. So you have to operate slowly. Then they lose. They didn't expect to lose. Donald Trump wins. So now they're like, crap. Now we're in trouble. Now our corruption's going to be out in the open. Supposedly Hillary Clinton said on election night, if we lose, we're all going to hang. So now the corruption's going to be made obvious. And largely it has been made obvious. So they're frightened. They're clawing tooth and nail, everything they can to discredit Trump, to go after him. And then something amazing happens. One day you wake up and you're James Comey and you're like, wait a minute. Everybody knows how corrupt I am and no one cares. There's not going to be any consequences for me. I'll write a book. I'll be a hero to those on the left because Orange Man bad. Now they don't have to take their time. They could be corrupt as they want, right out in the open. And people will accept it. Because their tools of controlling the narrative are so strong, there will never be consequences for them. And so it gets back to the original question. Would we be better off Hillary Clinton have been elected and that corruption stayed thinly veiled? Or with Donald Trump being elected, the corruption being made open, and now the intel agencies knowing we could do whatever we want and there will never be consequences? So to answer your question, Jax, I don't know if it was bad misjudgment that he appointed swamp people around him or that it was intentional. Either way, he should be held accountable for that, and the end result's the same. He failed. Now, the deck was stacked against him unlike any president in history, and he'll pay the price for his failure. His life will be torn asunder probably the rest of his life, but he failed. One second here. Let me check something. I say that as a Trump supporter, but I'm willing to admit he failed. Nothing is ever done. That's right, FTW. Yeah, public citizen. I get it. Like this. This is one of the things you get from the left that I think is hilarious. Public citizen says, wait, do you remember when Trump drew on a weather map with a Sharpie to prove he couldn't possibly be wrong? That was awesome. Yeah, I know. Like Trump, he says stupid things. Joe Biden, though, there's an articulate man that's never wrong. Remember when he was setting up the biggest task force to deal with Trump? Remember? Yeah, that was great. Oh, and he didn't know the difference between his wife and his sister. You remember that? Or the other day when he brought out his granddaughter and called her Beau Biden. Or when he acknowledged to us that he was putting together the biggest fraud force in the history of the country in presidential elections. All the stuff you could say that Trump did stupid with, like drawing with the Sharpie and saying Belgium was a good city and things like that. Yeah, that stuff happened. Yeah, you can make fun of Trump. I don't have a problem with that. Joe Biden does more than Trump did on that in 4 years. Joe Biden does more than that in a week with misspeaking and stuff like that. So, yes, very credible argument there, public citizen. Well, I thought it was a very big point when Trump used a Sharpie on a map. That was when I knew that there was something wrong here. Now, Joe Biden, when he's fighting Trump, that's the man I want. That has to have a lid in his campaign because he's so nonsensical that his wranglers are like, Mr. Biden, here's some candy. Just come in the basement and wait here, please. Public citizen, a big fan of fighting the task force against that. Maybe you'll get a call, public citizen. I think you would be a valuable member in a task force to fight back. It's a scourge, really. I mean, I know we talk about systemic racism being the biggest thing in this country, but clearly, we could all acknowledge, and I think we need to be teaching this to kids more in school. I think it's sad that when you're watching programming on your television, why aren't there commercials about this? Easily. It's not China, it's not Russia, it's not white supremacy, it's not COVID. The biggest threat to this country that should be taught to every single person is, I mean, that's just a threat. It's hard to articulate, right? It's hard to articulate. So, yeah. Yeah, believe all whistleblowers. Yeah, Biden wouldn't answer if he would pack the Supreme Court. Absolutely right. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have a media that's hostile to him. The media are his allies. I had people say this to me before, like someone I was on their channel debating said that they had a massive problem with Trump not understanding that he was talking to like a Kurdish leader as opposed to a leader. He got them mixed up. And that just proved their stupidity. I'm like, that's fair. That's a criticism to be made. But we're not looking at this in a vacuum. He's going against Joe Biden. Do you trust Joe Biden to not make slip-ups like that? Well, that's different. Joe Biden's slip-ups are different, I was told. They're okay. Biden being in obvious cognitive decline, no problem. Trump slipping up once in a while, that's a huge problem. Yeah, I mean, the CCP is incredibly happy right now. Assuming Biden wins, which looks incredibly likely to me. Yeah, the CCP bought a president. They bought a president of the United States. Joe Biden couldn't bring himself to say a bad word about China in the debates. Neither could Kamala Harris. All they did was criticize Trump's tariffs. We'll be getting rid of those shortly. So, hey, money well spent. You got to tip your cap to the Chinese government. Money well spent. Buying a president, worth it. What'd they pay? Like $5 billion in loans or something? Good deal. We know. Don't worry, public citizen. We'll let China know that you're one of the good ones. The rest of us, they'll weld us in our houses for COVID, right? That'll be good. Right, Jack, and I've had this debate with Dylan a lot. Jack Hex-Steeler says, Trump backstabbing the curbs sure was surprising. Not even I thought he would do that. Trump trying to pull troops out because every instance of my adult life that we've sent troops in places has been corrupt. Trump wanting to pull those troops out and then using the same old excuse we see every single time that anyone recommends pulling troops out. But you're abandoning the group there that we fought for. You're abandoning them. Oh my God, that's terrible. We have to stay in Syria for the next 200 years because of the Kurds. So here's what's going on. So the same people on the left that said it was dangerous for Trump to criticize NATO, one of our NATO allies is a country named Turkey, right? So Trump criticizing NATO and Turkey was bad. But we have to keep troops in Syria to protect the Kurds because our NATO ally Turkey will commit genocide against the Kurds. Make sense yet? So we have to be allied with genocidal maniacs named Turkey in this organization called NATO. But as part of our alliance with them, we now have to station troops on the border of Turkey because they're evil people that will commit genocide against the Kurds. That's the argument that's made from the left. Make sense? Did you know we have nuclear weapons stationed in Turkey? The argument from the left is we have nuclear weapons in Turkey and they're genocidal maniacs. That's the argument that Joe Biden's camp will be making. By the way, I saw that Erdogan came out, the president of Turkey, and congratulated Biden already. Did Trump ham-handedly pull out? Yes. Of course. But I would do the same. I'm sorry to say, I would have probably offered the Kurds that we could prove fought with us some sort of deal to come to America. But other than that, if I was elected president tomorrow, the very first thing I would do is go to every single country. Unless you could prove with 95% certainty that we needed troops stationed there, they would be brought home. Because time after time after time, I've seen corrupt people, corrupt neocons and neolibs, send our troops to die in countries for no reason whatsoever. All it does is make the situation worse. So I would bring them home. The Democrats, I used to march with the Democrats back when I was in college against Iraq. Bring the troops home from Afghanistan. That's where I was with the Democrats. I was with them. I was a Ron Paul Republican, but that's where I was. Now the same friends of mine that I had that were like, bring the troops home, are telling me I'm racist and xenophobic if I want to bring the troops home. That's how great the narrative control is. Now we have to stay in these countries forever. We can't leave. You don't think the same argument's going to be made in Afghanistan? Well, if we pull out of Afghanistan, look at these noble farmers that were fighting the Taliban there. Now they're just going to be swamped. We have to stay in Afghanistan to protect those people. If we pull out of Iraq, look, there's going to be fighting between the Shia and Sunnis, and we're going to give away, I forget which one's our allies there. Our Shia allies are going to be in a lot of trouble if we pull out of Iraq. And on and on and on and on and on. What's up, Cub Cuda? Kurds don't want to go to America. They want their land. Fine, then fight for it. So you're saying the Kurds don't want to come to America. They just want America to stay in their land and be their personal defense force the rest of their history, but they want their own land. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. If they were allies with us and we decide it's time to bring our troops back, we should stand and offer to them that they're welcome to come to America. If they're unwilling to accept that, that's on them. They were given an offer for safety and they chose not to accept it. I'm not saying to keep, and like I had this debate with Dylan, who's great, by the way. You should check out Dylan Burns TV. And Dylan knows, I'll even say he's more knowledgeable of the specifics of the Syria conflict than I am. I won't disagree with that. That's his area of expertise. Even he says that the reason that the U.S. should have stayed there was to put pressure on Assad and on the Russians. Does that sound like a good idea to you? If that happened in the United States, if Russia decided, well, we're going to help the Mexican government face off against these Mexican drug cartels, that would be a noble goal. The drug cartels are horrible. So Russia decides, hey, we're going to help the Mexican government fight back against these cartels because these cartels are a scourge. They're destroying people. It's horrible. So we'll help the Mexican government. But we're going to keep troops stationed right in the Mexican border with the United States. Sound reasonable? Well, we can't come home now, they would say. The Russian troops can't come home. We're helping the Mexican government. The cartels would destroy them, so we have to stay here. Oh, by the way, then we'll use them to pressure the U.S. government. You think that would work? You think the U.S. government, the people of the U.S. would be like, that's reasonable. Yeah, no problem. So we're stationing troops next to a hostile nuclear power because we want to put pressure on them. But Trump's the xenophobe. Trump supporters are the xenophobes. You see how that works? There is not a conflict that the United States has sent troops to in human history that someone wouldn't have been able to make the argument. If you pull troops back now, you put at risk our allies in the region. Name me one. Name me one country where that would be the case. It doesn't exist. So it's perpetual war. It's perpetual troops stationed. The world police, the United States. Got to keep troops in Syria. Got to keep troops in Afghanistan. Got to keep troops in Iraq. Should probably keep troops in Libya. Is there a country we shouldn't be keeping troops in? Oh, but look at how bad the treatment of the Turks are to the Kurds. That's horrible. Don't get me wrong. Name me a country in Africa that you couldn't say. There is a population being screwed. It's every country in Africa. So what? Troops there too? And we can't, once we're there, we can't pull out. Or those people that are being screwed over by the local government are going to get screwed over again. Name me a country we shouldn't have troops in then. Jack Hextealer says Afghanistan's a problem is we only make this situation worse every second we're there. Exactly. So I do know a little more about Afghanistan than Syria. So Afghanistan was basically set up, and I'm not saying this to be rude to the people of Afghanistan. I'm sure they're great people there, right? But unfortunately, it's well behind development in the rest of the world. So if you know a troop that was stationed in Afghanistan, just ask them what it was like, even in the cities and the urban areas. It's a bad situation. They don't have paved roads. They don't have plumbing. Like, it's bad. It's kind of like what we would picture like medieval Europe, right? So Afghanistan was basically broken into segments, and there were warlords controlling each of these segments, like basically like 12 or something like that. And what these warlords, this was before the U.S. came in, what they would do is they would go to farmers, and they were heinous. They would like brutalize the farmer's family, daughters, children, wives, things like that. And they would say, you're going to grow poppy seeds. Because that's how they made their money, through the drug trade, these warlords. And so these farmers that were growing, textile crops and, food crops were forced then by these warlords to switch to poppy crops. So the United States goes in. One of the first policies we had was called slash and burn. We went into the poppy fields and we burned them. Now, what do you think that does to this farmer? He just wants to provide for his family. Now, he was forced to switch. Okay, I appeased these warlords. Now my family's safe again. I'm making money. And then the U.S. comes in and totally ruins it. What happened is a lot of people that were against the Taliban and against a lot of these warlords started to side with them because they viewed the United States as these foreign interlopers that were coming in and were damaging their property. And so, how long's it been? I mean, we'll be on 20 years here soon in Afghanistan. No sign of leaving. Trump suggested leaving, and then remember we got the Russia bounty story that was never confirmed. An intel agency said they saw no proof of. But as soon as Trump was like, I think we should pull some troops out of there, all of a sudden, all the conservatives, the Bush types, and all the Democrats, they all came together to say, this is horrible. Trump can't pull out of Afghanistan. Is it any coincidence that's the exact same argument they're making in Syria? The exact same. Now, I know that there are people that have researched this more because there's more evidence out there of the noble nature of the Kurdish people. You don't think you could say the same thing, though, of these Afghan farmers? So just because people have an affinity for the Kurdish people, they say, this is horrible for Trump to pull out here. There is someone that has an affinity with the Afghan farmer as much as you have for the Kurdish soldier. And they're saying, we can't pull out of Afghanistan. The same's true in Iraq. The same's true in Libya. And so what this is an argument for perpetually staying in every country we ever set foot in. America should not intervene ever. I would say close to ever. If there's a direct threat to the American people, we should be able to intervene. And there are certain situations where I could see intervening, but almost none that we've done. And that's why I ask you, Jack, like when you say about the horrible nature of Trump pulling out and leaving the Kurds there, like, I get it. And I think it was done ham-fisted. I agree. But what's the greater evil? That? Or the people that are getting us into the wars in the first place? Like Joe Biden. Now, I know Joe Biden has since came out and said, well, I was against the Libya intervention and, I would be against all these wars. We'll see. We'll see. Because I'll put dollars to donuts in the next 4 years. We're putting boots on the ground somewhere around the country because we just gave the neocons and the neolibs a ticket back into the White House. And excuses will be made. My Democratic friends that were anti-war will say, but this time it's important to go. The Kurds are there. Now we have to go for the Kurds. Or this noble population. Or that noble population. We have to go. You're a racist for not wanting to go to this war, Rob. That's what my anti-war Democrat friends will tell me. All it took was electing Barack Obama, and all of a sudden, remember, I tell this story a lot. I used to go to these concerts. I was into metal and punk music, right? I had this album. It was a bunch of punk bands like NoFX and others. Punk against Bush. Bush lied. People died. Bruce Springsteen was out there. War criminal. Dick Cheney's a war criminal. Oh, these wars, they're so terrible. Blah, blah, blah. In comes Barack Obama. He perpetuates every single one of those wars and goes into more. Where's Bruce Springsteen? Where's all the punk bands? Where's all the metal bands? Where's all the hip, cool entertainment people that were against the wars? Now all of a sudden, Barack Obama gets a Nobel Peace Prize. And they're silent for 8 years. Now the wars were good wars. The exact same wars are good wars now. Because The party of peace endorsed them. The Democrats, they're the party of peace. Barack Obama's such a cool guy, so his wars must be cool, right? Makes sense. Right? Then Donald Trump gets in. Trump, look, he paid a lot of lip service to bringing troops home. He didn't bring as many as he claimed he was going to. Now, I understand. There were people around him that were pushing against that. It's hard for him to unilaterally do that. But the buck stops there. And he didn't achieve all of these troop withdrawals that he claimed he would. But certainly the other side was completely against it. If our situation in Syria was just to help the Kurds and to fight ISIS, why did we bomb Assad? Wasn't Assad fighting ISIS? So why did we drop bombs on Assad? So you got the leader of Syria is fighting ISIS and will wipe them out. He's going to win that battle. But somehow the U.S. says, no, we need to be involved in a third side. We're going to come in with the Free Syrian Army and the Kurds, and we're going to fight both of you. But it's just to fight ISIS and protect the Kurds. Garbage. The only time I ever saw MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post praise Donald Trump was the lowest point in Trump's presidency, where he dropped bombs in Syria. I remember just mouth agape, furious at Trump for it. And I'm just watching like, what? Turn it on to CNN. Finally, Donald Trump acting presidential today. Fox News, go over to them. Oh, good decision by Trump. You see? It's just a mirage that the establishment Republicans and Democrats are different. It's a mirage that Fox News was different than CNN. When it comes to the big issue, war and keeping people in the military-industrial complex rich and keeping people in power in this country, they all agree on that stuff. So the only time it was presidential for Trump was when he was bombing people. It's ridiculous. Yeah, and let me give a shout out to my friend Rational Wrong Thing. You can check his channel out. Where's the best place to find you, Rational? Is it on YouTube? I think it's on YouTube. That's where I follow you. He does a lot of parody videos and things like that, and he comes on my show a lot and talks politics with me. He's from Australia, and it's interesting to see a lot of the same globalist agendas we see here in the United States. You see it throughout Europe, you see it in Australia. So he could tell you, Australia, it's even more authoritarian right now than the United States. So definitely a good channel to follow. Rational Wrong Think. Rational, one word as spelled, and then space, and then Wrong Think as spelled, one word as well. What do I think about Barr saying Trump is preparing for his second term? I think that Trump thinks that the election was stolen from him. We'll see if they're able to prove that in court. I doubt that the courts will rule that way. But what do I think about Barr saying it? I thought it was Pompeo and not Barr. But anyways, I think Pompeo and Barr are a joke. I think that they've been whispering in Trump's ear for 2 years, oh yeah, this corruption, there's obvious corruption, we're going to get them. And their plan all along was to draw out the clock, get Trump out of office, and then say, well, you know. So yeah, my buddy Rational Wrong Think says on YouTube. So just look for the name Rational Wrong Think there, and you can find him there. So I got like 4 more minutes. EOR Explorer says, I was camping with mostly UC Berkeley students when Obama started bombing Yemen, and I tried to gently prod why Obama was doing this. It would not be good. Yeah, and you haven't finished your story, but I'm sure that most of them said if Obama's doing it, it's okay. Yeah, and there, Rational, if you're in the chat, you can see Rational Wrong Thing put his chat or his channel there. But so I'll be wrapping up here, but I thought it was a good conversation. So let me just say a couple things. One, I apologize, and I'm going to try to be, I'm not saying I'm going to be calm, like I'll still get fired up, but it's not fair, even on people that disagree with me, to take it out maybe as much as I have been. So I do apologize for that. Secondly, sorry, Jack, I can't answer your question if I see it. I think this is it. You say, Jack Hexstealer says, also you say America should only intervene if it's a direct threat. How do you prove that? America doesn't have a good track record. I totally agree. That's why we should default to not intervening. I'm with you 100%. But like, if there was a direct threat, like for example, let's say that a country bombs us, that would be a situation where the United States could intervene, right? Certainly that would be. So there are situations. But they're not even trying now, right? What was the rationale for going into Syria? How was Assad going to be any danger to the United States whatsoever? Instead, they come up with these convoluted, well, we have to go in there because if we leave Assad get power there, then he could change the geopolitical balance. Then that could affect our NATO allies, and then that could affect us. That's garbage. Tired of that crap. But what's up, Ted? But yeah, you're absolutely right. Jack, you're right. We should default. I know this is going to sound crazy. And Trump supporters, by the way, when I made videos calling Trump out for bombing Syria, Trump supporters were on me because a lot of Trump supporters, not the ones the people that I have left here are fantastic because I had tons of people that subscribed to me and left. Because there are a lot of Trump supporters that will follow Trump no matter what he does. That's not who I am. I'm going to call him out every time I see him do something I disagree with. I called him out heavily on this show today. I said he failed. He did not put the people that were doing this corruption in legal jeopardy. He didn't. There were extenuating circumstances. The deck was stacked against him, but it's still a failure. So I'll call Trump out. When I called Trump out for bombing Syria, I had people leave my show. I'm not going to listen to this. Trump did it. It must be right. That is not the way you should think. If you're willing to think that, oh, my leader's always right no matter what, you should really reevaluate your position. Because no one's going to agree with you. There is not one person in the world that will agree with everything you think. There isn't. There's not one political party. There's not one friend. There's not one president. So if you say whatever Trump does is right, whatever Obama does is right, like you're giving up some of your critical thinking skills and your ability to think for yourself. So in conclusion, what this was about is I think we could still talk about the fraud. I'm not saying I'm going to shirk against it. I've talked about the election day fraud a lot. Why? But I'm fully admitting to you that I see no 100% definitive proof. Everything strongly puts that way. And when I say that, don't be mistaken. That doesn't mean I don't think Trump should fight it in court. Of course he should. That doesn't mean I don't believe fraud didn't occur. I do believe it occurred. Just like I believe when someone pays a politician, a lobbyist, that affects their vote. Most times. I don't have proof of that, but I strongly suspect that the evidence suggests that. It's the same way here. However, I think we should also be focusing on, in the future, if we do not stop the monopoly on the control of information and this kind of alliance between the Democratic Party, not even the Democratic Party, the establishment, which the Democratic Party is almost totally in, the media, the tech companies, corporations like Pfizer, intel agents, unelected bureaucrats in the State Department. If we don't stop that alliance, they'll never need to rig one vote, ever. Think of the technology that's coming out with like deep fake technology and other stuff. They'll be able to make the average American believe whatever they want. And that means it will be used against you on the left as well. You will no longer have choice. You will have the illusion of choice. But you won't realize that your world around you, your narrative's been shifted by people that don't have your best interest at heart. That's why this election loss is, if it turns out that Trump loses, is going to be so disappointing. And I tried to warn people of this. I did. And again, I had a lot of Trump supporters tell me Trump's going to win 48 states. I was telling people in 2018 that the Democrats were going to intentionally collapse the economy. What happened? We had Democratic governors intentionally putting COVID patients in nursing homes, thereby causing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of COVID deaths. And then putting those numbers and going, look how bad Trump is. I warned people. But I'm not here to just say, I told you so. I didn't warn them good enough. I could have been better. I could have reached more people. I didn't. So, disappointing. But we have to be honest with what's going on to move forward, and I'm trying to talk to people on the left or in the middle why you should be so skeptical of a free press that's now propagandizing for one party, of an intel agency that's, we could see clear as day, was hostile to one administration and favors another, illegally so, engaged in a coup. And the big thing the direct evidence that I was pointing to today was the treatment of whistleblowers. How's that look? Just go back. Don't take my word for it. You don't have to. And by the way, you should never just take my word for anything, or anyone for that matter. Look it up yourself. Go back and look at the reverence for whistleblowers all the Democrats had when it came to the Ukrainian impeachment. Whistleblowers were the most important thing in the country. They had to be protected at all costs. You couldn't even know their names. Versus the United States Postal Service whistleblower in Erie. Treated like garbage. We see the audio where basically they were using interrogation tactics to try to get him to recant. Leaking to the Washington Post that he recanted even though the gentleman says he didn't. Where's the left? Where are they saying you can't treat a whistleblower like this? Does this mean that whistleblower is telling the truth? I don't know. He could be flat out lying. But the left told us we have to protect whistleblowers. We have to. We have to take their claims seriously. That's what they said. And now they're gone. They're disappeared. Who are the best, most factual conservatives to listen to right now? Me. Listen to independent content. That would be my recommendation. My favorite mainstream person's Tucker Carlson. But there are good ones. I like Molly Hemingway. I like Sarah Carter. I like John Solomon. They're all reporters. They don't necessarily have shows like mine, but oftentimes they go on these shows. I like Mike Cernovich, even though I disagree with some of what he says. I like Shapiro's okay. I agree with him maybe 60% of the time. But those would be some people I'd recommend. Public Citizen says, have a good day, Rob Noor and friends of Rob Noor. You're wrong more often than not, but still less than most right-wing talk. Thank you. Honestly, Public Citizen, I enjoy you coming on. I know we make fun of each other and stuff, but I actually do enjoy having you on. I think you've always been good on the show. And I do honestly, look, I'm not claiming that I know everything. I don't. I'm wrong a lot. For God's sakes, I told you Elizabeth Warren would be the nominee. And then once that was proven wrong, I said, I don't think Joe Biden will be the nominee come election day. Wrong. Totally wrong about all of that. Tracy Beans is good. You're right. Brian Gates, I don't know, but I'll take your word. But yeah, Tracy Beans on Twitter is good. Beans, it's Tracy with an E, so it's Tracey, and then Beans, Beanz. But she's good. I agree. And Crowder. And Andrew Klavan, who's on Shapiro's show. Michael Knowles, that's on Shapiro's show, is all right. Matt Walsh is all right. So, there are people out there. But whatever you do, stop watching Fox News. Just stop. I like Tucker. I'll still watch him on YouTube once in a while. But Fox News is horrible. Just be done with them. They're propaganda. They're just corporate news. They're just looking at it, trying to convince a different audience that they're right. They're terrible. And the last thing I wanted to say, so you can see the mistreatment of the whistleblower, the double standard. Look at those double standards. It's important. Look at the double standards in the Logan Act. Now they're celebrating. Oh, Biden's talking to foreign leaders. Of course he is. There's no problem with that. He should be. Yet Trump's team was investigated for that. And I just want you to remember once more for the 12th, 13th time on my video, we had someone make the claim that the reason that Donald Trump needed to be rejected was because how frightening he was. And when I asked for an example, they said he refused to condemn white supremacy, which, as I was able to show, over 38 times he's done so. More than Joe Biden has. How many times did Joe Biden condemn white supremacy? Ever? And he eulogized the Grand Cyclops of the KKK. So just remember that. The double standards are there. And it's worth pointing out. So I have an exciting day with my wife and her sister planned. I'm really excited. She got the day off work. So I'm going to have fun the rest of the day. I will be doing the show again at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I might be debating Valsh and some other people on the left about election fraud and stuff like that come Friday. I got to talk to my wife and see if I have time with that between medical appointments we have and work. I would really like to do it. So if I do that, that'll be Friday at 8 o'clock on this channel, and Dylan Burns will be hosting that. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. So, all right, everyone. Thank you so much. Those that agree or disagree with me, remember, don't get freaked, regardless on either side. Don't get so hysterical about this election. I think it's a huge deal. I think that we're watching in our face. It's not that we're watching our country being taken away. That's not what happened. It's that my entire adult life, I watched my country being taken away, and average people, and I mean all average people, regular Americans, black, white, Muslim, Christian, atheist, straight, gay. I watched normal voices not matter. Gradual decline, matter less and less. And then I felt with Donald Trump, we finally had a chance politically to fight back against that establishment. And if he loses, we're back to square one. some ways worse and some ways better. So it's not, I think this is the critical moment where we're losing our country. It's, well, this is the critical moment where we had a chance to fight back and we failed, but we keep going. But regardless of what your opinion is, don't leave politics like make you physically ill or mentally ill, right? Like you have a life. No matter what's happening in your life right now, you have things to be thankful for. Today's Veterans Day. Be thankful for the veterans that fought for this country, regardless if you're a Biden supporter or a Trump supporter. Be thankful for them, because the reason that we're able to have the lights on, the reason that I'm able to have a show like this talking to you, the reason that you're able to go to work or do whatever you're doing today is because someone fought and many times paid the ultimate price to keep you safe and to keep you free. So even if we don't like the direction the country's going, the only reason we have a chance is because of those great veterans. So if you see a veteran today, thank them and just kind of take a moment to remember what this day's all about. So thank you so much, everyone. You guys are the best. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I'm humbled that anyone will listen. Consider financial donations to me through, there's links to my PayPal and Patreon that are below this video. If you're listening on the podcast, feel free to go to my YouTube page at Normal America with Rob Noor, and you can find the links to all the places to donate. I'm broke as a joke, so I'd appreciate any donations, but that's all right. My life's still going good, and I'm going to have a really great day, so I'm excited to talk to you. Great show today, and as always, have a good one.